Hey everybody, it is Molly, and welcome to the first installment of this envelope address art series. So today I wanted to start off by using a black envelope to design on, but I didn't have one in hand. So I'm going to show you how to use an envelope punch board to create your own. Basically what this We Are Memory Keepers punch board shows you is a table of the card size, the paper size, and then it gives you information on what the score line value is. I was limited by only having a 9 by 12 inch piece of black paper, so I found one that allowed me to use 9 by 9 as my paper size that I could trim down to, and that's going to accommodate a 5 by 6 inch card, which is a little atypical, but that's okay just for this example. So I used my paper trimmer and I cut down to be 9 by 9, and the first thing you're going to do is you are going to first look up what your score line value is, and on that table it told me that for a 9 by 9 my score line value was 4 1/4. That's what that says right there. So as I put my paper in to be adjacent to that top edge, I am going to line it up so that that far left corner where I'm pointing to right now is aligned with the 4 1/4 that it told me to. Once it's there, I am able to do my first punch by pressing down that big teal button. And then you're going to take the score stick and you're going to run it from either the bottom left up towards the button, or you could also start at the button and run it down towards the right corner. I think I just said that wrong. The bottom right corner, not the bottom left corner. And you're going to score it. And then the next thing you do is you turn your paper counterclockwise 90 degrees. And all you have to do is align your previous score line with that little tick mark that comes off of the button, and then punch and score again. So after doing that, you're just going to follow those steps and continue to turn counterclockwise, align your previous score line with that blue tick, hit the punch button, and then score along the score line up to the button. I'll have to do this one more time, and when I'm finished, I'm going to have 4 punched little triangle pieces that you'll see in a second, and 4 score lines that's going to make up the rectangular or square area that you'll be doing your addressing design on. So now that I have all 4 of those done, you'll see the final product. You can throw away the scraps that the punch board creates. And at this point, I am going to show you that how it will fold in and what it will look like as an envelope, but we actually are going to get it back to being flat and taped down when we work on it. So you'll just fold in each triangle that was created. You can use the score stick to run it along the edge to make a more seamless fold. And then later on at the end, we will actually assemble this with some adhesive to glue the flaps down and create an actual envelope for you to use. So there's your writing surface, and as I was saying, you can use the score stick to make it a better crease right now. This could all be done at the very end as well, but I'm going to open it back up, and then I'm going to be getting my Post-it tape out and adhering it down to my work surface so that it is ready to start creating on. So for this next step, we are going to first tape down our envelope, soon to be envelope anyway, our future envelope, down with some Post-it tape that I have chosen to use this 2-inch wide version. The Post-it tape is really great for any craft project because it really won't tear your paper when you lift it up. And the width of it being 2 inches really protects your outside surfaces. So for example, in this case, it would be the flaps of the envelope. It's protecting those as we lay this down so that if we're going to be doing any kind of art medium that could extend over the rectangular or square area that you're working in, it's not going to mess up the flaps at the same time. It's going to almost be masked by the tape. So this is a good way to not only keep your work surface stable and ready to work on, but it also protects other areas that you don't want to get any color on. So after that is down on your work surface, I am going to pick out my stencil that I'm going to use. And This could have really been anything. If you have a background stamp that you'd want to use, if you have a different stencil that's not these falling snow that I'm using here. This is from Simon Says Stamp, and all links will be in the blog post and below in this YouTube videos for you to check out the products. But again, this could have been really anything. You could have done a number of things. You could pick a stamp that you like and done it in succession so it made a pattern itself. But I went with this one for today. So here I'm just trying to see whether I want to move it down and thinking about where my address type is going to actually go. But as I was thinking it through, I still kept it at the top because even though the stamp will be in that upper right corner, it won't matter that the stamp is going to go over some of the inked snowflakes there. So I'm going to just take a little piece of washi tape or any tape you have and adhere the stencil down so that it won't move when I am applying the ink. So this is called a ink blending tool. It's by Ranger, and again the links will be down below and in the blog post. And this white that I had is called Versa Magic, and it's archival, which is important. I'll get to that in a little bit. I actually couldn't find this link to give you, so I do link to a different one that would work just the same. It's important that it's an archival white ink, though, or a permanent white ink. So here I'm just taking the applicator that has a little sponge on the bottom of it, and I'm picking up the white ink, and with a gentle circular motion, I am going over the stencil, and you can see that I still have some black edges that I didn't carefully completely conceal, so I'm being careful to not extend my applicator past the stencil because I don't want any white to get on the black surface that didn't have the stencil on it as well. So I'm going to speed this up here just to 2 times while I'm doing the ink. But once it's all on there and you are happy with the application, you will first actually wipe down the stencil just to get the bulk of the ink that's on it off. Right here I'm taking my paper towel and I'm just doing a quick swipe. You really should use water to clean your stencils and any stamps too, with a stamp cleaner or with warm water or a baby wipe before you package them up again. But once you've done that, you can do the best part where you take the stencil off and see what's underneath. And we can put that off to the side now because we're going to be done with that for this project. So after you finish the inking of the background, it's a smart step to take a heat gun. I've shown you this one here, which is a Milwaukee brand. I believe it's Wagner now, but I'll have a link to that. Or you could also use a hairdryer, whatever you have. But it's a good idea to dry your surface where you use this ink, because even though it is, this one in particular was a dye ink and they dry fast, you might be using a pigment ink and those do take longer to dry. And you just want to do this just in case for this next step when we're going to start using perfect pearls, so that there's no tackiness for the perfect pearls to stick to that's not the lettering that we intend. So now that it's all dry, I'm going to take the EK Powder Success tool, and this is something that minimizes the static cling and also the tackiness of anything remaining on the page, on the surface you're working on. So it's just another tactic to help you with any issues you might have down the road with the perfect pearls. So I've picked up this glue pen, and this one is the fine tip. You can also get these in chisel tip. I prefer this fine tip that has a rounded edge like a bullet. And I'm just on the side there, I'm just making sure the glue is coming out. And you could have taken the time to do some pencil sketching here before going straight to the glue. I had an idea in my head of what I wanted to do, and I kind of just freehanded it. My thought process for the design was to have the first names be on an arc, as well as the last name below it. And then the address lines were going to be on a normal horizontal line following. So here I am writing out Brian and Sarah with the glue pen, and this particular brand, this Zig pen, I really like how quickly it dries. And what you're aiming for here is there to be no blue showing anymore, so it's dried to the point of being clear. And once it's clear, that's when you are ready to put the perfect pearls on, and they will adhere straight to the lettering. So you're going to want to have a paper towel in hand for afterwards, and I always take my perfect pearls and I get a little bit of each color into its lid, because this stuff, if it drops, if it gets anywhere, it's kind of a tragedy to clean up. So I just take the brush and I put a little bit of the gold into its lid, I put a little bit of the copper into its own lid, and I'm not too concerned about the cross-contamination. It's not that big of a deal, especially because I'll be using the same brush to blend them onto the lettering here in a second. But then I'd advise you to move the pots away, because I can't tell you how many times I've thrown one onto the floor and cried. So now I'm taking the brush and I'm kind of blotting each color down into the area that I want the different ones to blend. And after I get all of the color on to the lettering, I'm going to do a full kind of sweep through of the brush to really buffer the Perfect Pearls into the lettering. So now that all of the Perfect Pearls is applied, I would also advise you to put the tops back on your Perfect Pearls and set them aside completely. You're going to pick up your paper towel, and a Swiffer dry cloth actually works really great too. I just chose to tell you to get a paper towel because everyone most likely has those, but it will all do the same job. And you're going to gently, just so you're not, ripping up your paper, but rough enough to be able to pick up the excess Perfect Pearls as you go, and that cleans off the surface completely. And now the final step you're going to want to take just to set your Perfect Pearls for their journey through the post is using water. Actually, water is going to set the Perfect Pearls to be permanent. So I'm taking my distress sprayer, and you could use any water bottle that has a fine mist, and I'm just holding it probably about a foot to a foot and a half above the table, and putting a fine mist over the entire paper, dabbing off as much excess water as possible, and then just doing one more drying session here to get the rest of the black paper dry, in addition to the lettering. So now we're on to the part where we need to add the house address and the city, state, and zip. So I'm using my favorite white gel pen, which is a Uniball Signo Broad in white. And this first thing I'm doing here is the last name, keeping that same arced shape as the first and the two first names. And I start here with a sans serif type style, and you'll see in a little while that I changed my mind on that. But I'm going to speed the video up here a little bit and continue to tell you what I'm doing, just so it doesn't take such a long time. So continuing with the last name of Swanson, and I should, say that this is a completely made-up address, by the way. I don't know anyone named Brian and Sarah Swanson, and who knows if there's an Orange Lane in Orlando, Florida. There probably is. And the zip code's going to be wrong, but that's all for the sake of privacy, eh? So here I'm just adding a little bit more to the Swanson, a little bit more thickness to each letter. And then as I go in here and I write the address, the house address, on a more horizontal line. Oh, and just one little aside, you'll see me right there, right onto the palm of my hand. Sometimes with these pens, they don't flow as easily, and I found that if you write onto your hand, it gets the ink going again. So that's just a little tip. So as I was saying, when I was doing this house address and I did the same sans serif style, I wanted to go back and make the Swanson be a little bit more distinguished, so I ended up adding some serifs to make that style just pop a little bit more. So that's what I'm doing here. And then moving on to the city and state, I will be doing a script style, but because the Uniball Signo is not a brush pen, it's not going to allow me to do that as I write. It's not going to allow me to add, the brush calligraphy look as I write with the flexible tip. So what I'm going to have to do here is write out the city and state with the pen in just a monoline fashion, and then you go through, and it's a lot of times referred to as faux calligraphy, where you add the thick downstroke to the letters as an afterthought here. So I'm adding wherever your pen would have moved down the page, as opposed to a thin line moving up, I'm adding a little bit of thickness, and that gives it that more calligraphed look. And then finally I'll add the zip code below, and I decided to go just with a more spaced out, still centered but spaced out style of the numbers being separated by dots in between. So after finishing this, I was looking at it and I thought that it just needed something else. So I decided to take the white pen and kind of follow along the first name's letter shapes and create a rough outline, almost like a kind of a bubble around the first names. And then I'm going to terminate it into the last name, Swanson, on each side. And to me, that kind of made it almost like a package where the first names go with the last name. And we are in the home stretch. I am just going to add a few finishing touches. So with the white gel pen, I'm going to add a few highlights. And this is kind of like a typical highlight style that I always do, where it's like linear and also has a few dots that trail. And I kind of put them on where they feel right. They're all to the left of the letter. They're not going to switch sides in that sense, but there's sometimes that maybe you'll see two highlights on one letter, and some letters I only put one. It's kind of just a feel as I go kind of thing. So as I was finishing these highlights, I was noticing that the counters of the A's, the part that's completely enclosed, was not that clear just because I had been using a glue pen. So I took a permanent black marker, and that's linked in the blog post and below as well, and I kind of just added the counter in. And as I was doing that, I was realizing that that was actually a pretty good contrast of black. It was a really rich black off of the black cardstock that I was using. So I decided that I'm going to add a shadow, and I'll be doing that momentarily after this last stamping. So I wanted to add just a couple snowflakes to the background, and I wanted to do this at this point as opposed to when I first made the falling snowflakes in the beginning, because I knew that I was going to be doing perfect pearls and other things that I didn't want to have any issues with wiping the shape of the snowflake away by accident. So here I took two different snowflake sizes from a Hero Art set, and I applied them to an acrylic block. You always need something that you can mount clear stamps onto. And then I am just using the same white ink and kind of haphazardly placing the larger snowflakes, and then you'll see me place the medium snowflakes down too. And one, not necessarily a trick, but one way of doing stamping that I think makes it look a little more well polished is to not have every single stamp be entirely on the surface that you're working on. So you'll see that those last two stamps, I purposely made them go off of the page, off of the envelope page, onto the masking of the tape. And it kind of just makes everything look like things continue off of your work surface. So as I finish up here, like I mentioned before, I am going to be picking up that black pen again and adding a shadow to the Brian and Sarah, just because I was surprised to find that that black pen in particular contrasted with the black cardstock enough. Sorry, before I get there, I do one last round of drying of the white ink, just so I don't smear any of those snowflakes. And then, now I will do a shadow. So when you're adding shadows to any lettering, and it's similar to the highlight, you want to imagine where your light source is coming from. So here I'm putting all of my shadows to the right of the letter, and also a little bit off to the right corner, the bottom right corner. So that really means that my light source is coming from the upper left corner. So here in a second you'll see me move a Perfect Pearls pot here to my work surface, and it's helpful sometimes to add an object to where you're working to remind yourself of where is that light source coming from. So that's almost working like it's the sun, that's an example of a light source, and it helps you place where your shadows would go, where the letters would hide the light from the source, and that's where you would put the black down behind it. So as I'm finishing up here, I'm realizing that maybe on the screen you're not able to tell that this is actually doing anything, but in person you can definitely see the slight shadow of that, and it really makes the lettering pop even more. So now we're done, and I'm peeling off the tape from the surface so we can pick up our envelope. And like I said, I think I mentioned before, Post-it tape is really great because you really can't tear your paper, whereas some other types of tape might do that if you're not careful. So I would recommend, even if it's not the 2-inch kind, that you get some kind of a Post-it brand tape. So now I am going to adhere the flaps of the envelope down so that they actually resembles an envelope. I'm using Tombow Mono Permanent Adhesive, just a tape runner. And you're going to pick it up, turn it over, and fold in the flaps as you would imagine an envelope to look like, where I'm going to fold in the side flaps and fold up the bottom flap right there. And when I was looking at that, I didn't like the hard point of that triangle, so I actually brought my envelope punch board back out and I punched that corner just so it would have a slight rounded edge here for that area that you're going to see when you open up the envelope. So now that has a little bit of a radius to it, and now I will be able to take the side flaps in and see where I need to place down my tape and adhere everything together. As I was placing down the tape runner, I wasn't that careful to make sure that the entire width of the tape stayed on the black surface of the cardstock. So because of that, there was a little bit of a tacky edge on the inside, and I didn't want it was right at the little curvature of the top of that flap right there. So I didn't want it to attach both to the inside of the envelope or even to the holiday card that would be going into it. So I took a little bit more of that EK Powder Success tool that takes away static, takes away a little bit of the tackiness of the stickiness of things, and I just applied it to the inside of that little rounded edge right there, just to be sure. And we can call this envelope done. So thank you so much for watching, for subscribing to my newsletter to get access to this. I'm excited to do the rest of the 5 more that we're going to unveil next week. And please keep following along. Thanks so much, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, and be sure to check out all of the links in the blog if you are interested in doing something similar to this so you can pick up the supplies you need. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will see you next week.